Welcome back to the Punk Uncle Show. Today I've got another video on the Evil Insurgent. This is the new V3 that just came out summer of 2021. What we're doing today is changing the geometry. And what that means is that I'm going to switch the flip chip in the rear suspension linkage from low to extra low. That's going to change our geometry at the head tube and the seat tube. And what I'm going to do next is ride it tomorrow at one of my favorite downhill trails, climb up the hill, ride down, and see if I can tell any difference. Let me start by giving you the specs on the bike as it sits now before I make any changes. This is a large Insurgent, and this is the 27.5-inch wheel front and rear version, so the standard Insurgent. It's got a 180mm fork and 170mm rear shock, so those are the travel numbers we're working with. My bike in the low setting as it comes from the factory has a head tube angle of 65.3 degrees and a seat tube angle of 78.2. When I switch this to the extra low, that'll change the head tube angle to 64.7 degrees, and it will change the seat tube angle to 77.5. So we get a little slacker on both. In theory, what that means is, okay, it'll probably feel better and more confidence inspiring going downhill due to the slacker head tube angle. But then on the flip side of that, by slackening the seat tube angle, that puts you in a little bit less of an optimum position when you're climbing. Making this change is actually really easy. It only takes a few minutes. All you do is you remove these three bolts, these three plus the lower dog bone bolt. Those are what hold the flip chip in. And as you can see, it's in the low setting now. So you literally pop all this out, flip it over, screw it back in. That's the whole process. I found out that the coil spring keeps you from being able to just pull the flip chip out, so I had to unbolt the bottom mount for the shock. That way I can move it up and down to get the flip chip out. So one extra bolt that I didn't know on this bike we were going to have to do, but that's what happens when you do something for the first time. You'll learn all the little details. We're going to finish by torquing all the bolts to 5 Newton meters because that's what Evil says to do. A couple things to note. Remember, I discovered that you have to unbolt the bottom of the shock so that you can get the flip chips off. And then something that I learned when I was doing this on my following, and then remembered as I was doing it for the first time on the Insurgent here, is that when you flip it, it changes not really the distance, but just the point where the swing arm needs to be for the two holes in the dog bone to match up. Once you flip the chip over, in order to get the dog bone attached to it and this delta link up here, you have to have both dog bones out at that point. If you still have the other one in the other setting, you won't be able to get this one back on until you take that one off. Okay, the job is done. We are now at a 64.7 degree head tube angle and 77.5 on the seat tube. In this version, the 27.5, I feel like the bike is designed to be ridden in the extra low setting. That's on paper though, so now I'm gonna take it out tomorrow, ride this up the hill, ride it down the hill, get some real world seat of the pants feedback, and I will let you guys know if I can tell the difference, and if so, what that is and how I feel about it. All right, we're almost done with our climb today, so brought the Insurgent out in the extra low setting for the first time, and getting a feel for what it's like going up the hill. We've gone up getting close to 6 miles now, and probably like 1,400 feet, I would say. The head tube and seat tube angle both got a little slacker, as we mentioned earlier in the video. Obviously, this is on a fire road climb, not super steep, so that could be different if I were climbing technical single track, but that's really not what I'm going to be doing on this bike most of the time. This is, you know, more of the enduro rig where we're riding up fire roads and bombing descents. So I would say so far from the climbing aspect, no change in performance is good news. So thumbs up on it for the climb, making the switch to extra low. What everyone's wondering at this point, I'm sure, is what difference did switching to extra low make going down the hill? I wish I could tell you that I could give you some perceivable difference between in that point, it was a 0.7 degree change that we made from low to extra low in the head tube and both the seat tube. And I'm not gonna say, oh, I felt, you know, this characteristic or that specifically, but what I will tell you is that I felt confident. I've been riding this bike for a little over a month now, just stock in the low setting with the 27.5-inch wheels. Switching it to extra low today, I PR'd the trail, the downhill on my first run. So I think that says something. I mean, I'm getting more comfortable on the bike for sure, but I did notice as I was going downhill today, I was about halfway into the main section of trail, and trust me, I was not thinking about, oh, I switched this around. You're like, that wasn't on my mind. I'm just riding at that point. And what I did notice when I reflected back on the ride after I got down the bottom was that I had the confidence a couple times to just hit either a different line than I normally do or hit a same line even faster and hit some of the drops quicker and stuff like that. So definitely feel like I'm moving more into like a smash mode on this bike. And part of that, sure, is me getting more comfortable just with the bike in general. But I think making that geometry switch today had something to do with that as well. I mean, you don't normally make a change and immediately shave 10 seconds off of a downhill times. That's what happened today. So I got to attribute a little bit of that to the change and then some of it to just me getting more and more comfortable with the bike. The bottom line though, I'm not going to switch it back. Not while I have the 27.5-inch wheels front and back. I'm going to keep it like this because I honestly think it's better. I didn't lose anything on the climb, and I certainly didn't lose anything going downhill. I probably picked up some, you know, advantage and definitely just a little bit more comfort and a little bit more confidence by slacking it out just that much more. So all in all, the change from low to extra low on the new Insurgent V3, if you're running the 27.5-inch wheels, I like the geometry in the extra low a lot. I like it on paper, and then out on the trail in the real world, I just found out that it works really well in that sense too. So that's what I'm going with. That's what I'm sticking with. Hopefully that helps you guys out if you're, you know, trying to make that same decision. But the one thing I would recommend is just play with it. Flip it around and try it both ways and see what works for you on your favorite trails. And, you know, I could see scenarios where you might want to go back and forth depending on where you're riding, but you don't know until you give it a shot and see what it really feels like. So enjoyed trying that out. I'm glad I did it. I think you would be if you do it as well. Thanks for watching the video. Hit subscribe and like for me if you would. I'd really appreciate it, and join us on the next one.